about that. But before I go into those things, I'm going to push this off a little bit because I want to share a little bit about how I got here and why you should listen to me, and what are some of the challenges I had to face to get here, because much of this is also based on my experience and the amazing experiences my clients have gone through, who have created so much breakthrough in their life. So for me, every time I think about it, it goes back to this moment in my early 20s. At that time, I was struggling quite a bit. I remember in this moment when I was coming out of this subway station in Toronto region, Canada. As I was coming out, I was in my early 20s, but I felt like I had the body of a 80-year-old man. I felt weak. I felt disconnected. I felt like my life was passing me by as I kept watching people kind of go about their business. It was a busy day, and I had just come out of multiple nights of quote-unquote partying, having fun. But the reality was, I knew that I had been running away from a lot of things internally and externally in my environment. As I come out of the subway station, I go to the corner. I felt sick, and I had to kneel down. I threw up on the floor, and I noticed a lot of blood there. And I wasn't even actually surprised by that, because I knew I had been abusing my body for a while by now. And in that moment, what I felt was this huge surge of physical and emotional pain all over my body. Something I hadn't actually felt to that extent, to that intensity. But what actually surprised me even more than that was right after that, I felt this level of joy and peace that I had never felt before. And I didn't know what to make out of that. I thought I was going crazy in that point in my life. I mean, what did I know as a 20-year-old kid? But in that moment, I can tell you, just looking back over the years, after all this growth, after all this development, that I connected to a vision, a different vision for myself. I connected to an experience, a deeper part of myself. You want to call it my potential, you want to call it my core self, my soul, whatever it is. It helped me. Conceptually, I didn't know what was going on, but that month, I know I started to make a lot of changes in my life. And I'll take you back a little bit. I was born in a third world country. My family and I, we had to leave the place because of war and other challenges. And we had to go to the neighboring third world country where the conditions weren't much better. In fact, some of the worst conditions that you can imagine around the world. And somehow, my parents being parents, they created a life with a lot of good memories, but also a lot of challenges, as you can imagine. And when I was around 17 years old, my extended family, they sponsored us to come over to Canada, Toronto region. That's my home base now. I love this place. My children were born here. A lot of my family and friends are here. But when I came here at 17, it was probably one of the lowest points in my life, even considering my childhood a lot of times. And a good part of that was probably due to some of the traumatic experiences I've had, but also a huge part of that was coming into this new world at 17 and all of a sudden realizing that almost everything that I was taught back home up until that point was completely garbage, was obsolete. It didn't apply, a lot of it here. And I couldn't make sense of this environment. I couldn't make sense of who I was, what my values were, what my future looked like, how to connect with others, how to belong. I felt alienated. I felt disconnected. I felt more and more depressed. And that led me towards all sorts of negative things, from alcohol addiction to drug addiction to even depression for a number of years, leading up to that moment in front of that subway station. And like I mentioned, that month, based on that experience, I started to make a lot of changes. And one of those changes that naturally happened was I started becoming curious about subjects like psychology, philosophy, spirituality, history, sciences related to human behavior and natural systems. And I started looking into these things from ground up. I had to put a pause on almost everything that I thought and believed, because nothing was working at that point in my life. And as I started looking into these subjects and I started going to workshops, events, listening to lectures, that time we didn't have podcasts. Yes, I'm that old. And listening to a lot of audio lectures, reading a lot of books, and going to workshops and events. And after a little while, I also got a lot of support as well. And at some point I got coaching. This is what really transformed my life. That coaching transformed how I looked at the world. While I've had the past over a decade of learning and growing, maybe even close to 15 years, but it was the coaching that helped me get to the next level. And we'll talk about what that looks like. And we'll talk about more in the 5th video that I'll do. But aside from that, through that journey, I realized how much I had to grow, how much I had to question, how many things I had to learn. And that's what brought that passion that's in my heart to support people, because I realized at some point when I had started to create the life that I really wanted, that what would have happened if I had known this stuff before? Now, I couldn't go back in time, but I can help a lot of people on that path and cut down their learning curve by a huge amount. And that's why it's so important to me. It's not just a job for me to train and coach others. It's a huge part of who I am. And this is something I love doing. This is what I live and breathe constantly. And I hope in that story you realize that at this point, as I look at my life, I've created the life of freedom that I always wanted. I have multiple businesses. I have the family that I want. Connect with them at the level that I want, which is very important, emotionally, spiritually. I live in alignment with who I am. I'm working on the things that matter to me, connecting with the people that matter to me, and growing at levels that I had never imagined before. And I know that that's possible for you to create that joy in your life, for you to create that freedom for you and your family, for you to live more fulfilled and purposefully, for you to go towards that success that you seek, and even more, much more than you're probably thinking right now, because even the thoughts of success that you have is very limited based on what you're taught. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I do want to jump in and go to our first part of this video, where we'll talk about the 4 key areas that are holding you back in life, and make sure you take some notes in there, because that's going to be the foundation point, the starting point of where we're going to go in this 5 video series.